Welcome to On Top of PR with Jason Mudd, presented by Review Maxer.
Hello and welcome to On Top of PR. I'm your host, Jason Mudd of Axia Public Relations, and today we are joined by Steve Cody as our special guest. We are here to talk about his new book, The ROI of LOL, How Laughter Breaks Down Walls, Drives Compelling Storytelling, and Creates a Healthy Workplace. Steve, welcome to On Top of PR.
Thank you very much, Jason. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here and glad you are too. Steve, we met each other years ago, probably 2012 in New Orleans, I think, at a PRSA conference. And I remember really enjoying your presentation. And here we're talking about your new book, and you're doing kind of a speaking tour about it and a book tour. And I'm a big fan of comedy. And I think if you can demonstrate ROI of laughing out loud, then I want to hear more about it. So real quick, let me just share your bio with our audience here. Steve Cody is a multifaceted individual, blending his love for climbing, comedy, and writing. From summiting the highest peaks in Africa and Europe to raising over $50,000 for charities through stand-up comedy shows, he finds pride in diverse accomplishments. Additionally, as a writer, he contributes to Inc.com, and has notable appearances on CNBC, MSNBC, NPR, and other prominent media outlets, as well as authoring this new book. So, Steve, start us off by telling me what made you decide to write this book.
The book was a long way in coming, but it really wasn't until 2016 and all of the seismic events that we saw happen from that point on, and then the pandemic, and the work-life balance issues, the rise of isolation, anxiety, anger in the workplace, that more and more people urged me to write something. And I thought it was best that I co-author it with my longtime cohort, a professional comedian, Clayton Fletcher. It wasn't a hard sell. We had actually two publishers come after us once we put together the one-page outline, because humor is definitely of the moment. It is one of the last lifelines, I believe, that we can all cling to. And I think it's needed now more than ever in the workplace and society in general. So that is what compelled me and my co-author Clayton Fletcher to write the book. And it's not just Clayton and Steve. We have countless anecdotes from chief communications officers, chief marketing officers, all about how they use humor, laughter, both in the workplace and to chill out and diffuse, after a very intense day.
Yeah, I love it. Comedy has definitely saved me my sanity as a small business owner, for sure. And I've done a little bit of stand-up comedy myself, and enough to appreciate just how hard it is and how challenging it is. But at the same time, how rewarding it is. But you have to stick with it. You have to work hard. And I don't think people realize how much work goes into putting even just a 5-minute set, much less a 30-minute or an hour set.
Yeah, very, very true. And I got the bug back around 2008, and I performed 2 straight years, maybe 3 nights a week.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very best, I became mediocre. My professional and personal motto remains expect less, both on stage and off. But what I found, Jason, was after 2 straight years of performing stand-up and improv, I wasn't becoming a better comedian, but I was becoming a better communicator, better listener, I think a more empathetic leader. And I thought a lot of these skills that I've learned on stage would be transferable to the workplace.
Yeah.
And now, as part of our DNA, we tie it into our charitable gift giving at the end of the year. And now we also offer it to quite a few clients who are dealing with myriad challenges in the workplace. So it's when you're in a new business pitch, as you can appreciate, and the prospect says, "So what differentiates you from the 3 other firms?" I say, "Well, we're good, but one thing that the others can't talk about is having comedy as their DNA." And the comedy has really had a major impact on our attracting and retaining talent. Our annual turnover rate for the last 3 or 4 years is below 10%. And as you know, if you can attract and retain the best people, they in turn will attract and retain the best clients. So it's there's a method to the madness behind the comedy.
Good. Yeah, I like that. So, have you ever had anybody be turned off by the comedy approach or have their guard up because you're talking about comedy and they're worried about their organization being sensitive to those things?
All the time. The first thing I hear is, "Well, I don't know," and well, that just won't take hold here, or yeah, I'm really worried. We live in cancel culture,
Hmm.
and so what typically, we've done so many of these, and we have so many great references who can say that we conduct a lot of due diligence ahead of time. We understand what the guidelines and the guardrails are for each organization's culture,
Hmm.
and we make sure that before we do any training with clients' employees, that we make clear that they're not performing content that would be appropriate at Caroline's at 1 a.m. on a Sunday morning, but in a conference room at 8:30. So this
Right.
make this workplace appropriate, and when in doubt, leave it out.
Mm.
And knock on wood, we haven't had any issues whatsoever. But yeah, that's a definite concern that comes up. As a
Mhm.
matter of fact, in one conversation I was having with the CCO of a top financial services company, he said, "Steve, not only do we not laugh at my company, we don't even smile. We don't even smile. If I were to bring this to my CEO, I would be fired on the spot." So I felt badly for him personally because I wouldn't want to be in his shoes. But
Yeah. Right.
I respect that. I mean, this is not right for every organization. It's not right for every culture because
Yeah.
person sitting in the corner office, whether that's physical or virtual, he or she dictates the tone and the culture, and what is and is not appropriate. So, there are some people on Wall Street. There's also an individual who runs a company with a single letter, the last letter in the alphabet, who I wouldn't even dare suggest they inject comedy or humor in their cultures.
Hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Well, tell me, why is humor and laughter in business more important than ever?
Well, again, just look around. All you have to do is look at the news. All you have to do is read all of the surveys. The Wall Street Journal ran an article last week saying that there are more angry people in the
Mm.
workplace now than at any point in time during the pandemic. Anxiety, isolation, depression. There's so many different challenges that the CCO, the head of internal communications, the CEO, they're dealing with all new challenges and all new problems. And the other pillars of society have kind of fallen by the wayside, most notably the political pillar. So the trust is at an all-time low. So I think more and more employees, and surveys back this up, are turning to their employers to provide a safe place. And part of that safe place in the right culture is providing a safe place to laugh out loud, to enjoy each other's company, to learn new things about each other, to break down silos, to find new ways to collaborate and innovate. So I think it's more of the moment and will become increasingly important as more and more empathetic leaders enter the C-suite.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think that's great, and we'll do our best to include a link to the Wall Street Journal article that you mentioned in the episode notes, so people can check that out as well. There's the annual trust barometer that comes out once a year, and it said that consumers trust corporations more than any other entity at this time, and I think that tells you we're in a weird state, right? When people are trusting corporations more than any other entity. What do you think about that, Steve?
Well, sure, you look back 10 or 15 years ago, and businesses were at the very bottom.
Right.
But now there's, the media, politics, I mean, you name it. There's been so much misinformation and disinformation that, this is the last, life preserver. Businesses who can comport themselves the right way are the last, life preserver for employees who desperately want to believe that there is hope for the future. As you know, Gen
Mhm.
Z, there have been a lot of studies that they don't think there's going to be much of a bright future for them, and they're not worried about never paying back their student loans, maxing out their credit cards. They're living for the moment.
Mm.
So it's a very, very strange dynamic in which we live right now. And if we can find a right way to put a smile on someone's face or
Hmm.
inject humor at the right time in the right way. I think that goes a long way towards making an organization more employee friendly, an employer of choice, and it helps differentiate, and it really helps with brainstorming and innovating, and I believe it's going to be critical to not just surviving but thriving in the future.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that a fun work environment, right, a playful work environment is not only going to be a better place to work, but it's also going to generate more creativity and more innovation within the organization. There was a season in our agency history where we went 63 months with zero turnover, and I attribute that to being giving a lot of autonomy away, giving a lot of permission to have fun, and a playfulness attitude within our organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're finding too is that it has to be authentic.
Hmm.
So it's not enough to give the employees food or a ping pong
Right,
table or
right.
whatever. It has to be meaningful. So in terms of providing a workplace and a culture where A, it's okay to have fun, and B, I lead with self-deprecating humor. I'm the first one to point the finger at myself and say I made a mistake. I point out my foibles. Media training 101. But if an employee asks me a question, and if I don't know the answer, I will say I don't know the answer, but I will try to find out and get back to you. And I think during the pandemic, our comedy-based culture really helped us deal with all of the uncertainty. And I kept on
Mm,
saying, I will speak to you every week, 2 days or more every week. I will give you updates as I know them, but I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. And if
right.
you remember, there were quite a few high-profile CEOs in the PR world who, at the beginning of the pandemic, promised there would not be any downsizing, and then a month or two later, they downsized 500 people. So,
Yeah.
I don't want to be that person. I've never been that person. And so I think the humor part of it helped us
Mhm.
collectively get through the pandemic, and we've really been soaring since.
Yeah, that's great. So, yeah, I can agree with that, and I always tell people and clients, advise them, never say never, right? That's like so key. And so, never say there's never going to be layoffs, and we would never do this because you don't know when your circumstances are going to change. And when you're thinking about core values and things like that, obviously there's times where you can associate the word never with we would never do these kind of things, but as your company grows, you lose control of some of those things. And obviously, there's people in your organization who could do those things that violate your core values. And of course, you can deal with those people and deal with those situations. But at the end of the day, you can't say that your company would never do those things if somebody else did it. Now, it's one thing if you're in the C suite or the CEO like you and I are, and you say, hey, we're not going to do layoffs, then, hopefully, you can honor those things. But you just never know. And so it doesn't make sense to make promises you can't fulfill.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's how you lose the credibility with your
Hmm.
employee base. And the other
Yeah.
thing is representing clients or organizations who intrinsically, are bad actors, but because you may need the billings or whatever, you decide that you're going to do this anyway. So we have two core categories we won't touch. I don't necessarily need to name them, but we are strictly adherent to not going near either one of those. And if there's anything that's gray, we'll talk it over with our employees first.
Hmm.
Say, we have a new potential client, but they do X. Any of you uncomfortable with that?
Hmm.
Any of you think that this would undermine our purpose, our values, our mission? We're not going to undermine our core values and how we see ourselves just to win a new piece of business.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And you can't underestimate how valuable that is to your employees to know that there's leadership that's looking beyond the dollar, leadership that has a vision and commitment to honoring the reputation and the work. And so we've had some of those serious conversations as well, as you might imagine. And I'm sure you've been there. We've been literally in the middle of a pitch, and we've just decided, you know what, this is not a good fit for our agency, and literally just wrapped it up right then and there, either by phone, by Zoom, or in person. And I just think that's so important. And it's so funny how the tables turn. You're in the middle of pitching a company and suddenly they're pitching you on why you should stay. And it's like, we've already made this decision. We appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, on the occasions where we have had a bad client, whether they are abusive or they're stringing us out in payments, I think it sends a great signal to your employees when everyone agrees this client is just not right, and we fire the client. I think that sends such a strong message to the rest of the agency that it's not all about the money, that it is about, aligning with client organization who share some of the same values, whose company we enjoy and they enjoy our company, and we're doing great work together. So I think that's really critical to the health and well-being of any agency.
Yeah. And, Steve, for our audience, the clients that get the best work are the ones that have that chemistry and that vibe is a good fit and the culture is a good fit. And so, when we resign an account or we lose an account, you can almost point to, the moment you knew that it wasn't going well, and whether we should have stepped up or they should have stepped up and communicated that, is something you can do a postmortem on later. But I always try, as soon as I sense something is wrong, to try to bring it up. And humor and self-deprecating humor is sometimes the better way to do that, right? And so then people don't feel like they have to have their guard up, and you lower that barrier, if you will. But and you give them an opportunity to say, "Hey, I don't think you were happy with this, or I don't think this went the way that we wanted or we mutually wanted," and that kind of thing. Has that been your experience as well?
Oh, absolutely. Whether it's a new business pitch or, an ongoing client where we're making, presenting ideas on a new product, I really have learned, thanks to comedy, how to use silence to my advantage. So, so many of my sets were met with profound silence that, whether it's a new business presentation or if it's an existing client meeting in which, for whatever reason, things aren't going well and our ideas are being met with profound silence, I always say, I know why you're so silent. You're thinking, what a great idea that was. I have to share that with the rest of my direct reports. That immediately transforms the dynamics. In a new business pitch, it doesn't necessarily transform it to the point where you're going to win it, but certainly with existing client relationships and with the long-standing ones, we have quite a few. Our clients know that we like to, employ humor in the right way. And many of them come to our comedy trainings, attend our charitable fundraisers, share our sense of humor. So they'll inject humor, if they don't think a meeting's going well, self-deprecating humor. So it works both ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So Steve, what would you say if somebody is listening to our episode today and they're thinking, I work at one of these corporations, or I feel like humor is not appreciated, or my boss has no sense of humor or no patience for having a sense of humor. Maybe they've got a client that just doesn't have a sense of humor. What would be some of the advice you would give them besides maybe find a new employer?
Well, that would be A. But you can't force this. But what you can do, and we often do this, you do it as I do it, when a client CEO or senior executive just doesn't want to make a change, we'll show her or him what their competitors are doing and how the competitors have made this pivot. So when we have maybe it's a middle manager who really wants to sell in stand up or improvisational or sketch comedy, we share results from other organizations in similar industries. We've worked in so many different industries that we have great case studies. We have referenceable clients. So we let the client work speak for itself, and hopefully that can arm the middle manager or whoever the advocate is for bringing in comedy to perhaps change the mind of the key decision maker. But again, going back to the key decision maker, if she or he doesn't believe there's a place in the organization or the culture for anyone to laugh or smile, then there's no point in pursuing it.
Yeah. Yeah, there should be like a list of companies that have no sense of humor, and so you never apply for a job there. You never try to work with somebody there. I
A
mean,
great
it just
idea, actually, Jason. I may have to
yeah.
brainstorm that one.
I've never really spent a lot of time thinking about it, if I'm being honest. Now, I do have a list in my mind of companies I'd never want to work with again, or never want to recommend somebody work with, or just people in, leadership roles or client contact roles. They move employers and things like that. So,
I'll tell you one funny thing that I don't know if it's funny, it's ironic actually, but in the 10 or 12 years we've been offering this to client organizations and or organizations that aren't clients, the
mhm.
ones that run the funniest TV spots or social media spots are often the ones that say, well, that's just us on the outside. We are all sales, all business all the time. We would not want laughter or humor in our workplace. Whereas we've done our best work with some of the most serious organizations you can imagine, including defense contractors, accounting firms, major banks, very serious companies with very serious messaging and very
Mhm.
serious challenges. Those are the ones, ironically, who are most open to embracing stand up and improvisational humor, whether it's to break down silos, reinvent their storytelling, connect with their stakeholder communities in new and unexpected ways. So it's really been fascinating in that regard.
You're listening to On Top of PR with your host, Jason Mudd. Jason is a trusted advisor to some of America's most admired and fastest growing brands. He is the managing partner at Axia Public Relations, a PR agency that guides news, social, and web strategies for national companies. And now, back to the show.
Steve, I don't know how you feel about this, but speaking of like companies that advertise, I feel like a lot of the companies I see trying to use humor in advertising are just, it's so bland or just not even that funny that it almost makes me just scratch my head and say, do they really think this is funny to somebody? And if so, do they think that's going to motivate people to do business with them? So, I know in
Yeah.
advertising, and like anything, you've got to stand out from the clutter. You're spending a lot of money, so you don't want people just to ignore you. But at the same time, I just see some of these mostly commercials that are trying to be funny, and they just completely miss, I think, the mark of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. There are so many that after I've seen the 30-second spot, I won't remember what who the product or the company
Right.
is. What are they trying to sell me? Because
Yeah.
their company went so off the rails and didn't connect with me that they lost me. I just had no
Hmm.
idea what they were trying to sell me on. But obviously comedy does have a place. If it does, really hit the nail on the head in terms
Hmm.
of breaking through to, again, putting themselves in the customer's shoes, what will resonate with the target audience? Will they respond well, to humor? As you know, every generation responds to humor in a very different way. So
Mm.
this is a
Yeah.
delicate art, especially from an advertising standpoint. And one of the other things that we really stress in all of the stand-up and improvisational work is always put yourself in the target audience's shoes before you come up with a bit, before you come up with improvisational bit, sketch comedy. Think about the target audience. Who are you trying to reach? How would they react to this stand up or this improvisational troupe? So we're always audience focused, client audience focused.
So, uh, to build off what I just asked you, I'm always shocked when I see companies advertising on a network like Comedy Central, and they haven't taken the opportunity to create an ad specifically trying to be funny and insert that into Comedy Central, as opposed to just running the same ad they run everywhere else. And these are companies you and I both know have a budget to produce a custom spot for a fraction of the price of what they're spending to be on Comedy Central, right? To me, that's just a huge whiff. Do you agree? Is there something else I'm missing?
No, you're not missing anything. It's the media buyer not doing his or her homework. And yeah, I don't know about you, but I watch a lot of the NFL games on Sunday. I'm a long-suffering Jets fan. And I noticed, there are the typical ones that you would expect, the beer and the cars. And then all of a sudden, there's this very esoteric men's cologne commercial
Hmm.
that comes out of nowhere. And I'm thinking to myself, I think they missed the target demographic on this. I think
Yeah.
this is not going to play well in Corning, Iowa. So I just, you're spot on in terms of, really bland, commercials on Comedy Central, or a TV spot sticking out like a sore thumb, in the middle of an NFL football game, in between, ads for Chili's or McDonald's or Chevrolet or whatever. And all of a sudden you see this incredibly well orchestrated, well shot, beautifully choreographed commercial that I really don't think is aimed at the average football fan.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. It's a shame. You think it's the media buyer's fault, not somebody who's kind of overseeing both the creative and the strategy of where they're going to go?
Certainly the buck should stop with that individual, and
Yeah.
obviously all the self-inflicted wounds we've seen over the past year or so,
Hmm.
always, should be the responsibility of whether it's the chief marketing, the chief communications officer.
Hmm.
Not defending them when they do make mistakes, but there's so much going on in their worlds. They're
Yeah,
so
sure.
overwhelmed that they sometimes will place their trust on lieutenants who may be over their heads. And I
Hmm.
do think, looking at, I mean, everyone's been talking about Bud Light as the, well, I don't know what the opposite of the gold standard is, maybe the tin standard. But clearly, the CMO and I think his direct report were let go, were fired. But
Right.
there
Yeah,
were other
that's right.
people. There were other people in that food chain who
Hmm.
made those decisions, moved them up the corporate ladder. So I don't think it was one or two people in that instance, and I think it's rare that it's just one or two person or people who are responsible. But the buck should stop at the senior management level. Absolutely.
So getting back to the book for a minute, how might or how have you recommended that a company calculate the ROI of LOL?
Sure. Well, again, we face so many different challenges. So, for example, we recently worked with a top bank, and their challenge was that they had four different departments within their overarching marketing communications function: internal, external, special events, and social. And when the CCO took a look, he realized that the four groups were sending out four completely different messages to the very same stakeholder audiences. So we were brought in to break down the silos, use quite a few different stand-up and improvisational exercises. We broke them down, mixed them up, made sure that they were working with people from other parts of the department, and put them through exercises. And at the end of the day, after they had learned how to listen to each other, to story build, we asked them to create a compelling narrative they could all agree on, starting with putting the narrative in a 60-second overview, distilling it down to 30 seconds, and then doing 10 seconds with a hashtag. And we asked them to put everything up in the front of the room,
Uh-huh.
and that we had them circle the four or five key messages they all agreed upon. And lo and behold, we're getting much better audience response, better understanding, and especially on social, really crisp, compelling content that their subject matter experts are suddenly gaining, scores of new followers. That's just one example. Another example is a major global automotive company with a plant in the South where every conceivable divide exists. There's red state, blue state, high school dropout, PhD, European senior leadership, mid America, middle management. And when we first did our training surveys, the one word that came out was friction. Nobody got along with each other. Nobody trusted each other. So over the past year and a half, this has been part of an ongoing employee engagement program. But every month or two, we do ongoing improv and stand up to make sure they're enjoying each other's company, they're collaborating with each other. And it's gotten to the point where the senior management team asks us to do a half day rather, of improv for the senior executives. And then they go off for their retreat and they put together next year's plan as a direct result, because their minds are so open and they're so used to collaborating and they know each other in so new and different ways that it works.
Interesting. Yeah. So that begs the question to me. Does this start in your mind in corporate communication? Does it start in HR? Like, where does it need to start in the C-suite? Does it need to start from the top executive within the organization or location or division, where would you prescribe, or where do you see this working out best?
Sure, it depends. I mean, we just spoke to a company where they want us to work with their sales force, and it was the head of sales. So typically, it's the head of internal comm, chief communications officer, chief human resource officer. But there have been other instances where someone's read the book, and a CIO will call us and say, my department just is not getting along. I'm not getting anything done. I think a day-long activity like the ones you do might bring us better together. So we've literally worked for everyone within the C-suite. And I think, there'll be more and more opportunities with like the chief risk officer, because there are just so many, unforeseen risks out there, especially as we lead up to the 2024 election. There's going to be such a need for the workplace to be, perhaps the one place of sanity where people can turn.
Right.
So I foresee a lot of opportunities for us to help organizations find the right way to inject humor when it's going to get very dark and very divisive very, very soon.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. In fact, I saw a statistic just the other day of Biden's approval rating being at an all-time low, and the percentage of people that gave an approval rating, I felt in my mind immediately when I heard it, Steve, I said to myself, that's got to be the people who would just say yes if you just ask them. Like they're going to agree that their party's candidate is doing a fine job, and they will always say yes to that, right? So when I started thinking about that, that was really dawning on me just how low that approval rating must be. And I'm not trying to be political. I'm just saying there are people who are loyal to their party no matter what happens, and we see that every election cycle. So it was concerning to me to kind of look at that, and there's a lot of talk about just who the two candidates might be, and I think that should concern anybody at this point.
No question about it. I didn't live during the Civil War or the years leading up to the Civil War. But the other thing that worries me is, the mass shootings. And there's so many people who are carrying around AR-15s and 9mm Glocks. And if they don't like the outcome of the election, regardless of what side they're on, I really do worry about serious violence. I just think we're a powder keg right now.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we had enough violence in what was it, 2016?
Yes.
And again in 2020. That I'm a big advocate of not having those things happen. I think we have to figure out how do we best manage that individually and as a country. And I'm not sure I have the answer, but at the end of the day, I think that I'm all in favor of peaceful protests. I think when you start destroying personal property in the process, then there needs to be some sort of governance that happens there. And I'm not sure I have the answer for it, Steve.
Yeah, I don't know that anyone, Jason, does, and I think that's part of the problem. But I look at I try not to worry about what I can't control and focus on what I can control. And certainly within my own organization, with the clients that allow us to work with them in terms of not only doing great work in terms of getting the media results and employee engagement programs, but also those that allow us to help them break down silos, work with their people who are suffering from anxiety, depression, isolation. It's extremely rewarding. And it's something I never thought that I would be involved in, 10 or 15 years ago when I was just doing basic public relations work for my clients. But it's incredibly rewarding to go through one of these sessions and just see the zeitgeist of whether it's a department or an entire organization change, literally within 5 or 6 hours. Obviously, you need to reinforce that. It can't be done as a one-off, but it's a whole new way of giving it back, paying it forward, and hopefully making some sort of contribution in this massive confusion.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Steve, this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to getting deeper into the book. And certainly, we'll hope to see you at a future conference, perhaps, where maybe the two of us can, collaborate together in some way, where maybe we have, a workshop or something like that where you could kind of show us what you do, and we could be mindful of referring other people to you. So speaking of, if people want to connect with you and get a copy of your book, is Amazon a good place for us to give them a link?
Yes, Amazon is, and we actually have also set up a separate website of buying for the book, which is www.roilol.com.
Okay, excellent. Well, we'll be sure to put a link to that inside the episode notes, as well as put a link to your personal LinkedIn so people can reach out to you there. Is that a good place to catch you?
That would be the ideal place, Jason.
All right, perfect. And do yourself a favor, if you reach out to Steve, be sure to tell him that you heard him on Top of PR, so he just doesn't think you're some random person trying to sell him something, right, Steve?
Absolutely. Give me the source. Give me the source.
That's right. That's how I am. If somebody just sends me a generic request and I don't recognize them, I'm moving on. If they send me a reason why we should connect, then I'm going to give it a second look for sure. And I just keep recommending that to our loyal audience. They've heard me say it 100 times by now, probably, but it's amazing how many people don't do it,
Yeah, you're right.
Steve, any closing thoughts? I have one more question for you.
No, my only closing thoughts are, again, this is something that I think can benefit many organizations, many departments, but not all. And I do think that laughter and humor in the workplace is arriving. It's now a required course, by the way, at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. It's now a required course at Emerson College. It's now a required course at DePaul University. So there are so many skills, again, in comedy that translate to business that I think you'll see more and more of this in the business world.
Yeah, I completely agree. So somebody posted on social media today, you made me think about this. So what's your go-to, because we're recording this on December 11th of 2023, what's your go-to Christmas comedy movie? And I have a few nominees if you'd like to hear them, unless you've just got to go to.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've always loved The Christmas Carol. I mean, but it's not a funny movie, but I think it's the most compelling Christmas movie. But go ahead, give me the others.
The options were A Christmas Story, Christmas Vacation, Elf, or Office Christmas Party, which is probably not as well known.
I'm a Chevy Chase fan from way back when, so I would go with Christmas Vacation. Perfect. Phenomenal movie.
Yeah, absolutely. The person that posted this was trying to make the point that it's associated with generations. And I said, you know what? I think they're all movies that, well, maybe the exception of Office Christmas Party, that would be appropriate for any age, for the most part, and that anybody would really enjoy. So
you look at, not that it's necessarily a Christmas movie, but It's a Wonderful Life. That transcends generations, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We talked about that and watched that over Thanksgiving for sure. So yeah. All right, Steve. Hey, this has been fun for me. I hope it was fun for you. And at some point, maybe we'll do something else where the two of us can, do some dad jokes back and forth, or try to do some kind of comedy together, and on a topic that is, a little lighter, but at the same time, this is something very important. If you haven't gotten a copy of Steve's book, I highly encourage it. Click on the episode notes and get your copy today. So with that, this is Jason Mudd from Axia Public Relations signing off and trying our best to help you stay on top of PR. Be well.
This has been On Top of PR with Jason Mudd, presented by ReviewMaxer. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and check out past shows at ontopofpr.com.